today's program, I'm pleased to welcome three industry professionals. We have Chad Cordaro, the president of Heritage Building Maintenance. Hello, Chad.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Michelle Murray, the CEO of Living Wage for Us. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, and thanks for having me here.
Glad to have you. And Chris Arlen with Revenue IQ. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
So everyone, thanks for being on the program today. Today, we're going to dig deeper into the living wage program. So far on Straight Talk, we've had 2 episodes about this topic. And I'm going to put those links to those previous recordings down in the video description. So as you watch this episode, you can also access those others as well. But today, we're bringing everyone together to talk about the strategy it takes to really use the living wage program. Chad is the president of a building service contracting company. And so he's considering this and has questions for Michelle. And of course, Chris, we ask you to interject here and there as we go through our interview today. But this is really a nice conversation to figure out, where do you go with this program? How do you use it? And of course, Chris, your expertise is in proposals, because when a contractor takes on a program like this, they want to know, how do I present it to potential clients? So Chad, let's go to you. Do you have any questions for Michelle?
I do have a few. Michelle, I think this is exciting. It's a different thing. And, so some of the questions, I have, guide me along the way as well, right, with what you know.
Absolutely.
It's all new to me. I'm excited to talk through a few of the differences that I go through on a daily basis, right? So I guess just to start off, who would be the potential customers, for a BSC, and what does that look like, in regards to living wage proposals?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a wide range of ways that you can look at potential contracts that would be interested in a living wage bid, right? First of all, it's not always just the building owner, but also tenants that might be pushing in that direction. Living wage certified companies do have a requirement that they need to work with their building manager to make sure that they're getting living wages paid to different building services as well. So the first case is really looking at what types of companies are already committed on living wage. Now, we only have a smaller number on our website now where you can look at certified employers, but we have some quite large ones that will be announced in the next couple of months that are sort of over 5 billion annual revenues, big companies with buildings that need building services. And they will be looking for living wage bids. So that's the easiest way, because that that's a requirement. But there are a large range of other companies that might not have come through our system, for example, but have made this a real public priority. So I'll mention Unilever, who's out there talking all the time about how they need to ensure they have a public commitment to ensure not only their own workers a living wage globally, but their supply chains that includes all the building services that they might have involved. So that's one of those employers that it's important to say, hey, I know that this is a big priority for this kind of employer. So sometimes it's just as much as if you're looking at a specific contract, doing a Google search of the name of who you're going for and living wage, and seeing whether or not they've put out some public commitments on that. We're always happy to help if you have sort of questions about, hey, do you know anything about this specific building manager or this specific company that owns their own buildings, because we're thinking about putting a living wage contract forward, and we'll do a little digging for you and let you know, hey, this is a strong prospect that's going to be looking for this type of bid. It's going to be competitive.
Right. I'm curious to how you would target my area specifically, right? I mean, do you have a metric behind that, or how does that work on your side?
Target your area specifically in terms of buildings to contract with, or in terms of understanding the living wage in your area specifically?
It's kind of it's two-sided there, right? Both of all of the above with that.
Yep. Okay, so what we do is we estimate living wages county by county across the entirety of the US. But we align with sort of global gold standard principle to say not every one of your workers needs to live in the exact location where they're working, right? If you're bidding out a contract in a very expensive location, let's say Manhattan, or some other highly expensive county, we don't have the expectation that workers need to be paid to live in that county, just in the lowest cost county within a reasonable commute. And so we use federal commuting zones, and for certification, or for when we're looking at a living wage bid, we're going to be comparing that to the lowest cost county in that commuting zone, so that we know there is some place where workers can live decently within a reasonable commute to work. So that's how we get really area specific on, what we're looking at in a given location, making sure we know the breakdown in the living wage of all the costs in that location. Some places have a lot of public transportation, and transportation isn't a huge cost. And so you'll see that those will have lower transportation costs. Some places are going to have really high childcare costs because it's just the situation in a given location, and you'll see that that's going to be a bit higher. We want to give you specifics of exactly what's going into this so that you have something that's comparable and fair. We're looking at the same standards of living, but really accurate about what's going on specifically where we are. And it really depends about where your workers are working. And then we're also engaging companies that are working with us now towards their certification or are already certified to further understand when they're looking for living wage bids. Make sure that if we're working with building services contractors with BSCs, that we're letting them know, hey, we have all of these employees that are looking for living wage bids now, and really trying to help connect those dots.
Right.
Chad, I want to, Michelle. So let's say I'm in Chad's hometown of Des Moines, Iowa, and there's a client of mine who is let's just say a socially aware customer. We got a relationship, we're doing the contract, but an RFP is coming out, and I want to retain this, and I want to give something alternatively and change the conversation, right?
Yep.
What do I do? I mean, there's so many things that pop to mind. First of all, how do I figure out what an alternate proposal would be? What would be the pricing, the wage structure? You mentioned a very kind of complicated, not complicated, yeah, I guess it is complicated, determination, a calculation. So do we just go to your website? How does that work to figure that out?
Sure. So we have a number of different pathways through this. One is if you wanted to look at all the employees that you employ and they were all paid a living wage and you wanted to get your company certified, then you're going to come to us, reach out to me at michelle@livingwageforus.org. I'll have a conversation with you, answer any questions, and get you started on our online application system and our total remuneration assessment tool. That tool is going to give you the exact value of your individual benefits to save towards the living wage as well as your wages. So it's going to get more everything that's paid, not just a piece out. That's if you wanted to go for certification, but if you're trying to bid on a contract, maybe you're just looking at that specific contract, right?
That one, yeah.
Yeah, so we have another membership category that's called an affiliate membership category. It means that you get our ongoing use of our tool, our ongoing assistance on helping you understand what differences you would need to make, and us basically treating you like any certified employer, except for the fact that you won't have a seal to put on your company to say we are certified, all of our employees earn a living wage.
So the first step is to actually engage with you. There's not like I don't go to a website or the MIT living wage and pull a dollar amount and just put it in my proposal. The idea is that we engage on this.
Correct. The idea is we work together. And the reason why is because, yeah, you can use our dollar figures. They're all published online. And you could just put that into proposal, but that's not going to count for any benefits that you provide, right? Or if you use MIT's figures or anything, there's no way for you to get an accurate assessment. So it might look like you have a big gap to a living wage that you need to cover, when if you provide benefits, maybe that gap doesn't exist, right?
So your online living wage, which is public,
Mhm.
is as if there's no additional compensation from the company, from the BSC.
That's correct.
So, okay. So we might, if I just looked at your numbers, I might actually overestimate the cost.
Well,
right?
that's true. And I don't ever think it's wrong for workers to be paid
No.
more, but for sure, if, one of the reasons we set this up is it should be beneficial for employers as well as
Yeah.
workers.
Yeah.
And so we want to help you figure out how can you do things that are the biggest impact to workers at lowest cost to you. So
Okay.
we'll point out, hey, if you put an FSA in place here, that doesn't cost you anything, but it'll save tax money towards the living wage, and that will credit towards it, right?
Okay.
There are different types of structures that we would look at your situation and try and help you through. We can do that on a contract by contract basis. If you're an affiliate member, every time you want to put in a living wage bid, you can put in, the way we would start is say, put in all your data for what you'd put a normal bid in, right? Put in all the information about benefits and what that starting wage is. What we'll do is assess that for the location where you're bidding, right? And we'll say, okay, your gap is this. Now let's show you a few changes that would be really low cost that might help you cover that gap. That's a combination of benefits and wage so that you can do this easier. And then you're able to, once you see that you've got everyone there, you've got them to a living wage, you know what that is, that's going to give you the figures or the plan to put into your proposal. And at that point, you could say, hey, we're an affiliate member of Living Wage for Us. We got this analyzed through their tool. We're happy to say, confirm that that occurred. The only thing we can't say is that if you're not certified, we don't do compliance, verification and compliance, right? So we would have to be clear that these are self-reported figures on that, as opposed to our certified employers where all of their workers are working through a verification system and making sure.
Okay. So what kind of help? You mentioned a really good back and forth. I told you I was going to ask hard questions, right? Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
I can mute
I'm
Chris
writing-
if you want me to. I can mute him. I won't do that.
No, you can keep him here. You can keep him here. I like it. He has good questions. We're good.
Well,
Go ahead, Chris.
I want to do that. Look at this. He's the moderator, right? He's the host. What a host. So Michelle, I consult and I'm going to help the BSCs put together the text proposal with graphics and research and evidence. So as an affiliate on a one-off contract, what kind of content that can you provide to help us put it into a BSC proposal, that will define the affiliate relationship, define what that means, and then, so what can you help on that?
Yes. So
I think you got Chad's attention with that question. He's like, what can I do?
Yeah, I'm writing stuff down, right?
That's perfect. So yeah, we're happy to help with that. We're not just here to check a box and be gone, right? We really want to be here to assist those that are trying to advance living wages and make that as easy as possible. So what we'd be happy to provide boilerplate text on what is a living wage, what is a affiliate membership, what does it mean when you say you've had your figures analyzed, how much can we confirm? All of that we're happy to provide you and let, work together with you if you need some alterations for something. We want you to have the tools to advance this yourself.
So we can actually have language in the proposal that says, please go back and check with Living Wage for Us that we've actually went through their methodology on this proposal, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's absolutely correct. So, we're happy to help you through with that. We will put in that language that's self-reported. So we haven't come in and audited you. So we don't know. We can't promise that that's exactly, but that generally is what their requirement is. They want to know generally, are you, and hopefully have a good enough relationship where they can trust what you're telling them.
Yeah.
And we're looking at all different facets that come into that as well.
Okay. There was another question in talking to Chad. This was his ideas.
Right under the bus.
Would Living Wage for Us participate in a shortlist presentation to the customer? So say the BSC submits it, they go through all the stuff, and then they make the shortlist. And typically you don't have to fly out to Des Moines, but you know what I mean? A Zoom meeting as one of the presentation teams for the BSC for those specific questions about is that unheard of, novel idea, not going to happen?
Novel idea, but not going to happen. Certainly within the range of possibility. And Chad, maybe you can give me a little bit more detail, but what it really would depend is how many of those a year, right? Because we try to keep our fees reasonable so that we can, we're a nonprofit, but we still have to make sure if we had to do one a day, probably not, right? We couldn't make that commitment.
Sure. I think it would just be for, clarity, and you always bring the professional to the table, right? To close the deal.
Yeah.
I would also say, if that's not something we would want to do on an ongoing basis, but we trigger it to the larger opportunities. I think the other thing that was in my mind was, maybe the dress rehearsal, right? Part of it. So we can talk to you and you can say, okay, these are the things that really should be picked up and discussed during that, solution to the customer. So I think that's kind of where we're driving this. I mean, I'd love for your team to be next door and just to walk over, but reality sets in, and I understand that's not a thing, right?
It's not a thing right now. As we grow, we're growing. Our team is going to be all across the country. So right now we're on the East Coast and West Coast, but as we fill out the middle, we hope to have people close enough by that they could help you out with that. At this point, that we're not big enough. That said, we're happy to join that kind of a situation as well as a dress rehearsal. We very much believe in the living wage concept. And if it helps us to talk about the importance of that and how that can impact both the quality of the work that someone is receiving, as well as, so many other social benefits and so many reputational benefits, we're happy to be there to answer questions, give technical help. And honestly, for us, it allows us to have more exposure to someone who might say, hey, we really like that. We'd like to also get living wage certified, or we want to make sure all of our employees beyond this bid are also earning a living wage. So we're always happy to partner with our members to say, let's help get the word out together and support you.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
My turn.
Yeah.
So you talked about certified companies and affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
Why would Chad choose one or the other? Chris, we're just going to go there, I think.
So certified companies, we have a rule that all of your employees have to be included. It can't be per location.
Okay.
The reasoning behind that, and just because I think this is a really important point, is some places across the US, the cost of living is much higher than others. Some places have stronger unions and thus bigger prevailing wages, especially in building services, right? Higher prevailing wages. What we don't want to do is say where it's easy for folks to do living wage. They're just going to certify those locations, and we're going to ignore the workers that are in the most trouble. And if we allowed a location by location certification, that's most likely the situation that we would have as an avoidance for the workers that need it most. We don't want to have that. But that said, we also don't want to create a barrier where if you can't yet get there for all of your workers, you're not trying to get there incrementally for some. And that's why we created an affiliate system, so that we can continue to help you in that until the point that you say, okay, we think we have enough contracts and interests that we can make all of our workers at a living wage and get certified in that way.
Okay.
Right.
Michelle, on that certification, so can an affiliate member get their wage certification done as for their individual contract locations and then be able to publish or promote, we are living wage certified at certain locations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I was trying to just get at is we can't do a location by location certification.
Okay.
Just because it works against the overall idea. It discourages folks from helping those that need it most, workers that are in the biggest gaps to a living wage. Let's not worry about those. So it helps motivate getting all workers up if we reserve certification for whole companies.
Okay.
But on a contract basis, like I said, we want to support. So we're happy to, be a reference to say, yes, indeed, this worker went through. We could add to the verification system. That hasn't been that hasn't been a question that came up. But if, you wanted to put a bid in and say this is verified and there's total compliance in place, we're happy to add you into the compliance mechanism through the affiliate membership. It's just the certification seal that we reserve for an entire company's employees.
So we just need to come up with a new name for that.
I would not suggest working the system. This is not the approach that I would go, Chris.
Chris, we're recording this, Chris. We're recording this.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Hey, let me ask this. So if Chad were to go all in, how much of a competitive advantage would that really mean?
So it depends. There's different levels of this, right? So if you have someone who's really looking at, there's another way of identifying companies, especially large ones. Look at an organization like Just Capital and where they are ranking the top performing companies in terms of social issues, right? Or ESG type of things. Those are most likely interested in a living wage estimate. So one, if that helps you bring on new clients because you're going in a way that others aren't, that's going to have a huge impact to your overall revenues, right? Those companies are looking at, top rated companies are looking at this issue. They are going to know when you bring up, what about a living wage? That's likely going to ring true to them. So that can be a huge, just immediate revenue benefit if it helps you win new contracts that otherwise you might not have bid for or, might not have an existing relationship with. The other thing is that paying a worker a living wage in and of itself has major benefits. So the UK Living Wage Foundation has been around for 10 years, right? And they've done surveys of all their certified employers and find out what's the difference. Huge retention benefits. When folks know that year over year, you're going to look at living wages and make sure that they're able to stay at a living wage and they're not going to be just getting a bump when you need to hire and then being in trouble when you don't, people tend to stay. Recruitment costs are something that not all companies track, but they are high. Training costs are high. So those are a lot of costs that you're going to save on and reduce by having living wage payment in and of itself. Productivity is also one that there's a sort of wealth of research that productivity increases. And a lot of reason for that is low wage people often have to do side hustles to make their bills, right? That is just a reality that we live in the US and many places around the world. When you're doing a side hustle and you're working another job on your off hours, your productivity is going to be much less. You're tired. It's a very simple, logical conclusion, right? And frustrated. What we want to do is make sure that you don't have to do that in order to live a basic, decent life. And by doing so, we've seen a lot of results of increased productivity, less sick days, because when people can afford health insurance, then they're more likely to get preventative care and they're healthier throughout the year. So a lot of immediate benefits to that.
You mentioned the side hustle thing. Is there a different living wage or is it adjusted when an employee has a secondary job for, you know what I mean? That the janitorial work is a secondary job for part-time for extra money. Does it matter that at all?
So in terms of part-time versus full-time, they both earn a living wage. Our estimates are already assuming that in a family of 4, one of the workers is part-time and one of them is full-time, and that together they're working to make enough to support that family. We're not expecting one person already full-time earning enough to support the whole family, right? If that part-timer is not also earning a living wage, then they're going to come up short, right? So that's why we look at part-time and full-time in the same way. You know, folks might be doing that in order to reach their living wage level. But the other thing really that comes into play and that we've noticed is a lot that have been a lot of jobs that have been the side hustle, I guess you would say, the moonlighting job on their other job.
Yeah.
When you move towards a living wage and make a public commitment on that, right? When it's beyond the contract, it's saying, hey, we're getting certified. It does have an impact on employees. And we have seen it, specifically in a cleaning company we worked with, workers that were also working in fast food. And then they were also cleaning that left their other job because they didn't need that and suddenly had time in their lives to spend with their families, grow their communities, have a lot more impacts that are super positive for communities overall, basically.
Let's go back to Chad. He must have some more questions because this is about him and taking over Des Moines, right?
Yeah, sure. You've touched on many of the questions that I had. Obviously you got different levels, right, of certification, the affiliate and such. What does that mean as we move forward in costing, right? Is there levels with that as well? And how does that connect?
Sure. So we actually have 2 tiers of certification as well as the affiliate membership. And they all have specific certification fees based on the amount of time that we're likely to have to be helping with bids, helping with, anything that might come up. Because we
Zoom
certainly
meetings.
Like Zoom meetings. That's exactly right. So we have a sliding fee scale for us, for our services based on annual revenue. And the reason we do that is so we work with some employers with over 5 billion in annual revenue and some small employers with under $1 million. It's certainly going to be easier for us to assess the ones with less employees than the ones with a lot more, and the burden should be less, right? So we're happy to sort of share any of those quotes in advance on what the application or affiliate fee would be and what each tier of certification would be. Now, the certification level, let's say you said, you know what, I think we already reached tier 1 of certification, and let's just get our whole business certified at this point in time. That is not at a living wage yet, right? That shows a commitment to living wage. And the way that it does that is you get certified with a base wage or cash wage. So that could be bonus plus base wage, but cash wages outside of benefits of between $15 and $18 an hour, depending on where you are. And then the commitment is to close the gap to a living wage, to a full family living wage that's there with benefits included at a rate of at least inflation plus 3% annually. So what that's doing is having a very nice public commitment that we can work with you year over year to track, that you can use a seal to say exactly where you are. Once you reach a full tier 2 certification, then we give you the tier 2 seal. And you just keep up with cost of living changes. But in the meantime, we help you in that roadmap and that planning to cover gaps to a living wage over time. Because we want employers that are certified to see the benefits of that as they're trying to get there. We believe in the concept enough that, this is beneficial to business. This isn't just altruistic. It makes sense that we would say, use this certification while you're doing the commitment. Just keep closing ground. Just keep getting closer.
Right.
The affiliate, though, doesn't have any of those commitments.
Okay. Along those lines, how does Living Wage for Us promote the company, right? The BSC. What visible presence do they have in marketing? Is there something sliced off where that's going to help me get my word out, right? I'm curious to know that.
For sure. So for every employer that we certify, we do a social media announcement that we spread far and wide. We will do, depending on the desire of the employer, we'll do a joint press release. We have press contacts all across the country, quite a large list of those that we release things out to. We'll try to get you some press in terms of that. We'll also let any of the larger employers that we're working with that would have potential BSC needs in your area, we would let them know. We would say, hey, we want to draw your attention to, we have this living wage certified employer in the area, or, they would be good for you for contracting going forward. If you'd like for us to make a connection, we're happy to do so.
Okay.
We really want to highlight and celebrate you as much as possible. So if you had other opportunities, we have had employers say, hey, will you speak on this panel with us and talk about, what we're doing?
Okay.
Happy to do that. We really want our businesses to do well.
Do you have literature also that I can use to blast out to market as well? And
Absolutely.
that you would approve for me to do so?
Absolutely. We want you to talk about it as much as possible. We want you to, if you're certified, use the seal on your website, use it on your bids, use it on whatever, you can to get the word out on that, whatever's useful for you.
Okay.
Michelle, can I circle back to something and be a bit of a stick in the mud?
Sure.
But kindly. 2 levels of certification, tier 1, tier 2. And certification means there's a commitment by the BSC, the employer, to bring everybody up over a period of time. I don't think in the BSC industry, in my experience, right, that is going to be, I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, because from the medium to small BSCs down, it's primarily geographically, right? They're not going to go do biopharma across the country and that's all they do.
Right.
That would be that could be a certification, but I don't know of any client that just does that, or BSC does it. So I think most of them have a geographic area. And within that, there are going to be those customers that they have had and rely on, or even prospects, who this is not a fit for. You know what I mean? There's always that price sensitive person. So how could if a BSC has a geographic metro area and wants to do the certification, they would start with an affiliate and try and get as many, but the reality would be where they're playing, right, in the field they're playing in, how do they bridge the gap from affiliate to tier 1 on certification? What's that journey, or might that look like?
Yeah. So, I think that's different in different cases, right? I think the first step to making any of those decisions is just getting an analysis with us, right? We have just getting an assessment. You're not committing to any long-term fees. You're just getting an initial assessment of maybe you do all of your workers across all of your contracts. And what we can then show you is this is where you would have struggles. These are kind of your weak points. Let's first talk about, can you cover that gap with or without the support of your existing contracted companies, clients, right? So there is some things that might be possible to close gap by changing some things you have in your benefits, right? That might not, if your gap isn't huge, that might not cost you a lot. And you might decide, and we have talked to some BSCs, that they're going to decide to go ahead and get certified and pay a living wage to anyone anyways, because they have a clear pathway of what to do, even in the case that one specific company, they don't care, right? They don't want to lead on this.
Right.
We want to help you understand how to do that in a really low cost way to you. There are things that don't cost anything for you to implement, but cover part of the living wage, right? Tax-free instruments for workers, for example. We will sure you see where that impact is, and you're offering that to everyone. That, granted, won't cover dollars an hour, but that covers, here's a 25 cents an hour, here's another 25 cents an hour, and starts getting you a good understanding of, how can we create a system where we can absorb the shock if a company is not looking for a higher, level quote, right?
Yeah.
How can we arrange it in a way where it's not going to hurt the company and where overall you're still getting better benefits, right? We want to cut your costs.
Right.
If you're having lower recruitment retention costs overall, that might make up the difference of what you would otherwise put forward to some of those contracts. So we want to help you with that so you can implement it across your entire company.
So your first step might be, as an affiliate, without making a commitment, is to get a comprehensive BSC company-wide
Yes.
assessment to give kind of a roadmap to how you may go about it. So here's a hardball question too. So I was thinking about, Silicon Valley BSCs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cost of, they're paying really high wages now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure other benefits as well. What happens when it's if I'm doing Silicon Valley and I'm doing union employees,
Mm-hmm.
can I just say, hey, living wage, certify me? If I'm doing living wage, if I'm doing union,
Mm-hmm.
a collective bargaining agreement, and it's higher than the living wage, can I pay you and get the living wage certification?
Of course. There's no, we don't have any friction with unions at all. We certainly work hand in hand and we're always in communication with one another. There's nothing wrong with paying, if you're paying a union rate and it's higher than a living wage,
Yeah.
for sure get certified as a living wage employer. You're paying that for as long as that's going to all your employees. So that would include, admin staff, for example, that maybe weren't covered by that union contract. Yes, definitely you can get living wage certified. It'll probably be easier for you in those locations where there are strong unions because you're already paying those higher rates. Where we would have an issue, and I just want to flip it the other way to be clear, is if a living wage is lower than a union prevailing wage and you want to get certified in that location to avoid having to have any unionization or contracts, we have a do no harm clause. We basically saying we don't want this to be used as a tool for union busting. And if it looks in any way that that's going on, we won't certify. But that's simply a matter of not trying to cause harm in other ways.
Yeah, what a mess that would be to try to lower wages. Chris, that's what Chris was thinking. He was thinking.
No. I was thinking, Jeff, I was thinking that a union contractor certifies as living wage, and all of a sudden it's no longer a negative, because union to customers, during negotiation is not a good thing. You've heard about, unions trying to do stuff, but all of a sudden you flip it and it becomes a living wage. It becomes a positive. So union actually gets overlaid with the actual true benefits of what the living wage for us are doing. So I actually think if I'm a union contractor, man, I'd sign up everything. And that's what I would put out first and foremost. I wouldn't say I'm union 57 or, whatever the union is, right? I'd say I'm a living wage for us certified, because that has a far more meaningful, it's still going to have the same retention. But I think it also might have some emotional impact inside with employees. I think they're going to feel better.
Smart marketing.
That's what I am, Jeff.
I mean, yeah, we absolutely, like I said, we absolutely think that this should be used as a marketing tool whenever it is helpful to you. We want it to be helpful to you. We don't want it to be used to hurt the union movement. But what you're explaining, where they're already making above that, and this helps in marketing, that's great, right? As long as we're being supportive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jeff, you're going to cut this part, but Michelle, what?
No, I'm not.
Can you mention the pricing structure for the low end of your?
Yeah. So what we would have is, if you were looking at an affiliate membership, which is initially getting the analysis done, working with us as you're thinking about a plan, for employers with Under $1 million in annual revenues, it's $350 a year. It's not that much. For those, let's talk a big jump with, let's say you have between 10 and 25 million in annual revenues, it's $2,000 a year. We're not trying to do anything exorbitant, and that gives you access to our ongoing time and assistance. And the highest structure we have is for employers above 5 billion in annual revenues, and that's US revenues, because some of them are multinationals, so we don't count outside of the US. It's $20,000 annual fee. So that's the range is between $350 a year and $20,000 a year. We try to keep that reasonable based on size.
And that's affiliate.
That's for affiliates, correct. If you reach so for certification, if you reach a tier 2, so that means you're paying a living wage to all your employers, the fee is going to range from between $300 a year, which is your annual certification with less than $1 million in annual revenues, to again, $20,000 a year for above 5 billion in annual revenues. So it's very similar for tier 2 certification fees. For tier 1 certification fees, where we're going to help you make sure you year over year are meeting those sort of increase and gap closure goals. It's at the lowest level is $400, and at the highest level, it's going to be $40,000. And we tend to spend a lot of time with those employers. The other opportunity that I just didn't mention before is that if you just wanted a one-time snapshot and you didn't want an affiliate where we're helping you on an ongoing basis, we can do just that assessment just for a one-time application fee. And that would be between $250 for employers with under $1 million and $10,000 for the application fee for if you have over 5 billion.
Well, sign me up.
Between. We will sign you up, Jeff. I'm going to talk to you afterwards, and I'd be happy to get you started on the process.
It sounds very reasonable. I saw the shocked look on Chris's face.
It's so affordable.
Well,
it's
we're
so
not trying to, we're not trying to create barriers here. We just want to help you get where you're going. We're a nonprofit. We're driven by mission. And if we set fees too high, we can't achieve as much. So we're trying to keep that reasonable for our time.
To wrap up, Michelle, could you tell us how to find more information? Maybe mention your website.
Sure. So you can go on to livingwageforus.org. There's going to be a ton of info for you there. There's going to be living wage rates. There's a map. If you look at tier 2 certifications of rates across the country, every single county with all the breakdown, so you can get an initial glance. And if you want to follow up and have a conversation, or you think you want to start with an assessment or move forward, simply reach out to me at michelle@livingwageforus.org, and I will go ahead and make sure to understand, okay, where's your revenue? What are your zip codes? Let's get you started on getting your assessment complete.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you all, talking to you, Chad, and seeing you again, Chris and Jeff.